As he avoided my gaze, I couldn't help but notice the quiet tension in his posture, the way his presence filled the room without effort. My hand moved instinctively, brushing against his. The warmth of his skin lingered, sending a subtle shiver through me. He looked up then, his eyes meeting mine, piercing, searching, as though they held the answer to a question I hadn't yet asked. He leaned in, lifting me gently onto the dining table, his movements deliberate yet tender. For a moment, the world around us disappeared, leaving only the unspoken connection between us. "Oh, were you here all along?" I asked, startled out of my thoughts. Let me start from the beginning, so you can understand how it all came to be. My name is Eva. I'm 54 years old, and for the past 2 summers I've lived as a widow. My late husband, Alfred, was a good man in many ways, but not the man of my dreams. I know that sounds harsh, but it's the truth. Ours was a marriage of duty rather than love, weighed down by his disappointments and rigid ways. When Alfred passed, I believed the door to romance had closed forever. I busied myself with simple joys, tending my garden, knitting in the evenings, and spending time with family. Love was a distant, faded memory, something I thought I no longer needed or deserved. Then Liam came into my life. Liam is Alfred's grandson from his first marriage. He's 27, with a quiet intensity that's impossible to ignore. His emerald eyes seem to see right through you, yet he carries a weight, a sadness that makes him enigmatic and magnetic all at once. He arrived that summer on his way to visit family in the countryside, planning to stay only a few weeks. At first, he kept to himself, roaming the nearby woods or reading on the porch. I'd catch myself watching him from the kitchen, drawn to the quiet strength he exuded. There was something about him, something I couldn't put into words. It began with a simple gesture. I was struggling to fix an old wooden fence one afternoon when Liam appeared. Without a word, he joined me, his hands steady and strong as he worked beside me. There was a calm focus in him that reminded me of Alfred in his youth, but Liam's demeanor was different, gentler, more thoughtful. In the evenings, we'd sit together on the porch, the warm glow of sunset wrapping us in its embrace. We'd talk about life, memories, and dreams, his voice soothing as he shared pieces of himself. It was in those quiet moments that I began to feel alive again, as though some long-dormant part of my heart had been awakened. One day, while cleaning the attic, I stumbled across old boxes that hadn't been touched since Alfred's passing. Dust motes danced in the sunlight as I sorted through them, lost in the echoes of the past. Then, I heard his footsteps. Liam stood in the doorway, his silhouette illuminated by the golden light streaming in. His eyes softened as they met mine, and in that instant, something shifted. The air between us felt charged, as though the attic itself held its breath. His shirt clung to his skin, damp from the relentless summer heat, as he stepped closer and offered to help. Before I could protest, he was at my side, lifting a heavy chest as though it weighed nothing. His strength was effortless, a quiet display of his presence. We uncovered a box filled with old photos, and I couldn't help but smile as I sifted through memories of my youth. The laughter, the stories, all came rushing back, and I shared them with him as if those moments were ours to relive together. He took one photo, examining it closely, his fingers gently tracing the worn edges as though the image itself were sacred. "You're so beautiful," he said softly, his voice breaking through my thoughts. When I met his gaze, there was something there, an intensity I couldn't name. Curiosity, longing, and something deeper flickered in his green eyes. The air grew thick, charged with unspoken words and a tension that neither of us dared to acknowledge. Then, without warning, he leaned in and kissed me. Slowly, deliberately. His lips brushed mine, igniting something deep within me. It felt wrong, like stepping over an invisible line I had drawn for myself long ago. Reflexively, I pulled back, startled by the moment. But did I want it to stop? He seemed to sense my hesitation. This time, when his lips found mine, There was no room for doubt. His kiss was unyielding, his hands finding their place on my body as if they had always belonged there. My resistance faltered, giving way to something raw and undeniable. The cream-colored dress I wore seemed to dissolve under his touch. A warmth climbed through me, starting at my toes and making its way upward with an urgency that left me breathless. I let out a sound I didn't recognize, something primal, something free. I let out a sound I didn't recognize, something primal, something free. Faster, I whispered, a request that became a demand, and he obliged. The world around us fell away, replaced by the rhythm of our movements and the electricity that crackled between us. When it was over, I found myself on the floor, disoriented but alive, my heart racing. I adjusted my dress and stood, but not before noticing the dampness on the wooden floor beneath me. It wasn't sweat. It was something else entirely. That evening, as I stood in the kitchen preparing dinner, I felt his eyes on me. The weight of his gaze was almost unbearable, yet I didn't want it to stop. He sat at the table, tracing patterns on the wood with his fingertips, his presence filling the room. When I turned to meet his gaze, it was as though the walls had closed in around us, leaving no space to escape. My hands trembled, and I dropped the knife I was holding. He was at my side in an instant, his hand brushing against mine as he reached for it. The touch lingered longer than it should have, setting off a chain reaction inside me that I couldn't control. "Are you okay?" he asked, his voice low and intimate, almost a whisper. I nodded, quickly pulling my hand away as I focused on the vegetables in front of me, but my mind was far from calm. Something was stirring within me, something I couldn't explain or name. A desire, a need, a recklessness I hadn't known in years. "We can't keep doing this," I murmured, my voice barely audible. He didn't respond. He just stood there, watching me, his expression unreadable. "Let me know if this fits your vision, or if you'd like further adjustments." Here's a rewritten version of the third section, maintaining the romantic tone while refining the storytelling. He approached without a word, closing the distance between us. His movements were deliberate, his presence magnetic. I couldn't tear my eyes away as he drew nearer, the summer heat making every moment feel heavier, more charged. His shirt clung to his frame, and the faint light cast shadows across his features, accentuating every line, every curve. The tension between us was palpable. My heart raced as he gently lifted me, his hands steady yet unyielding, and placed me on the dining table. Time seemed to slow, each kiss, each touch weaving us together in a way that felt both ancient and new. Our bodies moved as if guided by an unseen rhythm, every sensation heightened, every moment electric. It was as though the world around us had disappeared, just the two of us, bound together in this fleeting, impossible connection. The kisses deepened, becoming vines that wrapped around us, pulling us closer, entwining our souls. For a moment, we were no longer two separate people, but one entity, caught in the pull of something far greater than either of us. As the morning light filtered softly through the curtains, it brought with it a bittersweet clarity. I lay there, staring at the ceiling, my mind swimming with thoughts I couldn't yet untangle. I heard Liam moving around the room, the scrape of his boots on the floor, a quiet reminder of the inevitable. When I turned my head, he was sitting on the edge of the bed, his back to me, his shoulders tense. His bag sat beside him, already packed. My chest tightened at the sight. "Are you leaving?" I asked, my voice barely audible. He paused, his hands hesitating as he tied his shoelaces. "I think I should go back," he said softly, not turning to face me. I sat up slowly, the sheet slipping down my back. "Why?" The word escaped me, raw and unguarded. Finally, he turned to me, his green eyes softer than I'd ever seen them. "Mary, you know why?" he said, his voice laced with quiet determination. It can't go on. It's not fair to you or to me. You said it yourself." He was right. I had said it, just last night, when I tried to convince both of us that this was something we couldn't continue. But now, with him standing there, ready to leave, I wasn't so sure. But what if I don't want you to leave? The words tumbled out before I could stop them. He froze, his gaze locking with mine. For a moment it felt as though time itself had stopped. Then he crossed the room and knelt in front of me, so close that I could feel his warmth. "Mary," he said, his voice trembling just enough to betray the depth of his struggle, "I care about you more than I should, but staying here, letting this go on, it will only hurt us both in the end." I reached out, my fingers brushing his cheek. "It already hurts," I whispered, my voice shaking. "I thought I was done feeling this way, Liam. I thought that part of me was gone. But you brought it back. You made me feel alive again." He closed his eyes, leaning into my touch for the briefest moment before taking my hand in his. His warmth steadied me, even as his words cut through me. "You've made me feel things I didn't know I could," he said softly.